Lawyers, what's the strangest law that's won a case for you? I won $1 million case because my client's neighbor was legally required to maintain his fence, and when it fell down, it created a butterfly sanctuary that violated zoning laws. This sounds completely insane, but let me explain how this actually worked. My client Emma owned a small organic farm just outside Portland. She'd been struggling financially for years, barely breaking even on her vegetable crops. Her neighbor Jake had this old wooden fence that separated their properties for over 30 years. In 2019, Jake decided he didn't want to maintain the fence anymore. He told Emma, "It's your problem now if you want privacy." But here's where it gets interesting. I discovered an old property covenant from 1987 that specifically stated the eastern property owner, which was Jake, was responsible for maintaining that exact fence line. When Jake let the fence rot and fall down, something unexpected happened. Emma's property was suddenly exposed to a vacant lot on the other side of Jake's land. That lot had been abandoned for years and was completely overgrown with native wildflowers. Within 6 months, Emma's property became a natural corridor for migrating butterflies. It was actually beautiful, but there was a huge problem. Emma's land was zoned for agricultural use only, and the county's environmental protection laws classified any property that became a primary habitat for protected species as requiring special conservation zoning. The county sent Emma a notice saying she needed to either restore the agricultural barrier or pay for a zoning change that would cost her $40,000. She was devastated. She called me crying, saying, "I can't afford this. I'm going to lose my farm because my neighbor won't fix his stupid fence." That's when I dove deep into property law and found something incredible. Oregon has this old statute from 1923 called the Boundary Maintenance Act. It says if one property owner's failure to maintain a required boundary structure causes material harm or financial burden to the adjacent owner, they're liable for all resulting damages. But here's the brilliant part. The law doesn't just cover direct damage. It covers any consequential financial obligations imposed by governmental authorities as a direct result of the boundary failure. I filed suit against Jake for the zoning costs, Emma's lost agricultural income, and damages for what I argued was forced conversion of agricultural land to conservation use. Jake's lawyer laughed at me in court. He said, "Your Honor, you can't sue someone because butterflies liked their neighbor's flowers." But the judge read that 1923 statute very carefully. I presented evidence that the fence was Jake's legal responsibility, that its removal directly caused the butterfly corridor, and that the county's zoning requirements were a direct government response to the boundary failure. The judge ruled in our favor completely. He said, "The defendant's failure to maintain a legally required boundary structure has imposed substantial financial burdens on the plaintiff through no fault of her own. The chain of causation is clear and foreseeable. Jake was ordered to pay the $40,000 for zoning changes, plus $60,000 in lost agricultural income, plus attorney fees. But the real shock came 6 months later. The county decided Emma's property was so environmentally valuable that they offered to buy the development rights for $800,000. She could keep farming, but she also got this massive conservation payment." Emma called me sobbing again, but this time from happiness. She said, "I went from almost losing everything to having more money than I've ever seen, all because Jake didn't want to fix a fence." The craziest part, Jake ended up having to build a new fence anyway because the county required it for the conservation zone. He spent $15,000 on a fancy cedar fence that he could have avoided with $200 of fence repair. Emma still sends me pictures of the butterflies every spring. She's expanded her farm and now does educational tours about sustainable agriculture and wildlife conservation.